Can't decide and torn between a romantic, comedy, action, or an indie film to watch for the weekend? Well. Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast is your ultimate guide to the latest movies. Join us as we dissect the latest on the blockbusters. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast.
Hello, and thank you for tuning into the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Davey Peppers, and I am very excited to get back into a few more reviews, discussions, and general ideas on the wonderful world of film with you wonderful people today. So, up on the docket, we have a review of the brand new Disney Plus film, Secret Society of Second-Born Royals. Then we're going to do a review of the film Ava, which came out in DirecTV Now a couple months ago, but is on proper on-demand as of a few weeks before. And then we're going to do two pieces of a little personal retrospective that I have been doing, where I have been going back and watching all 5 Karate Kid movies, because I have never seen any of them. And I figured, I don't know, that might be kind of fun. Might be fun to start using this as an excuse to knock some things out of my backlog. So we're going to take a look at The Karate Kid and The Karate Kid Part 2. And without further ado, let's go and start with the headliner for today's episode, Secret Society of Second-Born Royals, now streaming on Disney+. Directed by Anna Mastro, written by Alex Levac and Andrew Green, based on a story by Litvak Green and Austin Winsberg. The movie is a co-production between Disney Plus and the Disney Channel, although it is not terribly obvious in the marketing that this isn't just your standard Disney Plus film like Artemis Fowl, One and Only Ivan, Lady and the Tramp, Mulan, all of those things. So the main reason why I wanted to talk about this movie is, well, A, Miranda July's Kajillionaire isn't going to be on VOD for a couple weeks. I thought it was going to be on VOD this weekend, but it's not. And that bummed me out, because I was really looking forward to watching that and talking about that with you all. But while it is in the middle of its few-week-long theatrical run, we're going to do this. So the main reason why I wanted to talk about this film is because one of the leads, like the lead adult of this movie, is played by Skylar Astin, known to the world for his role in Pitch Perfect, and known to me for his role as Greg in Season 4 of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, my personal favorite TV show of all time. So I was really excited to see what he was going to do, even if I wasn't particularly excited for what the film was looking to be. So what the actual film is surprisingly not based on a mid-2000s young adult novel, but it follows a young woman named Sam, who is the second child of a royal family of a fake kingdom. Think, what is the, I'm trying to remember what the Princess Diaries kingdom is. I know it's not Geneva, because that's the Geneva Convention, but it sounds like Geneva, so we're just going to pretend that that's what it is. But this kingdom is called Illyria, and Sam's a bit of a troublemaker. Her dad's been dead for a while, and her older sister is just about to turn 18 and inherit being queen, being the ruler of this small country. So she's making trouble. She's just being a angsty, trauma-ridden child, and she gets sent to summer school. She gets there and is revealed to her that there is a magical gene only found in the second-born children of royal families where they have superpowers. So Sam and 4 other students that are learning about their new abilities and learning about their place as a sort of Kitty Avengers protectors group. A young man named Tuma who can convince anyone to do anything. January, who can steal other people's powers. Roxana, who can turn invisible. And Mateo, who can control insects. And Sam's power is super senses, so Daredevil, but she can also see really far, which does kind of take away the most interesting thing about a character like Daredevil, but this is not a time for complexity or like super intense discussions on the nature of having powers and the trade-off back and forth of that. This is, more than anything else, this is a Disney Channel original movie. And if you, like me, grew up watching Disney Channel original movies a lot, this will almost somewhat refreshingly remind you of some of those, I guess not really classics, because like 10, 15 years old, but some of those movies that a lot of us grew up on. Not necessarily the classics, like the late 90s, early 2000s ones, but more the pretty good ones that were still going on in like the mid to like mid-late 2000s, stuff like Minutemen. And the biggest difference between Secret Society of Second-Born Royals and a movie like Minutemen is that I was 10 when I watched Minutemen, and I am 22 now, and I am so far out of the target demographic for this movie. Like I said, the marketing was not super clear about this basically being a Disney, because it's a Disney Channel production with Disney Plus. And this feels so much like a pilot for a Disney Channel show. And that would have been really cool if I was the target demographic for it. I was watching this movie and going, man, if I was like 8 or 9, I would have watched this movie so often. I would have bought the DVD with the little like digital copy thing in it, and like the Disney Fast Pass. You could press the button to skip the menu. All those little weird nuggets from my childhood that for some reason are cemented into my brain. But I'm not that person anymore, and it is hard for me to get excited about something like this. About it's very techie. It's got a lot of science fiction, some fantasy elements, obviously with all the like royal kingdoms. It just feels kind of like a hodgepodge of better young adult stories and better young adult ideas. There's a lot of Maximum Ride. There's some of the aforementioned Artemis Fowl novels. There's obviously some Harry Potters, some Hunger Games, some Divergence. There's not a lot here for me as a 22-year-old young man. And that, while it will reflect what I'm going to continue to say about this film and will reflect my eventual score for the film, I think it needs to be clearly stated up front that doesn't really matter. It doesn't much matter what I think about this movie, which I'm sure is a wonderful podcast hook. But it doesn't. I am not what this film is made for. I am not what this film is going for. And quite frankly, they could give a crap about what I thought of this film. So what did I think of this film? It's pretty okay for a Disney Channel original movie, and it is pretty not okay for a real movie on a streaming service that is not being marketed as a television film. That's one of the weird casualties of the streaming homogeny that's been going on right now, is there is no real proper distinction between a film like Marriage Story going on Netflix that is a theatrical, exceptional, exciting experience, and for lack of a less condescending term, it is a real movie, versus something that would have been put on television. It would have been put on TNT, but instead it was put on Netflix. The lines are blurred, which is a beautiful thing because it helps people discover things more and prevents people like myself from writing things off or being condescending about various films that don't align with what I would say count as real movies worthy of discussion. If Disney Plus wasn't around, there would be no way that I'd be talking about this, because it would have just gone to Disney Channel and I would have never even heard about it. And I don't know, maybe that would have been better for me, but I think it is a absolute net positive that a movie like Secret Society of Second-Born Royals can almost sneak in under the radar for me and show up without warning on my list of things to potentially talk about, to potentially watch, and to potentially experience. I think that's a really cool thing, even though it is frustrating and I don't like it. Something, comfort zone, getting out of it is good. That's what my therapist has told me. Who's to say? So the movie does its traditional, they're training, they don't really like each other all that much, but they slowly learn to build a bit of a small family that got kind of like an X-Men First Class kind of thing going on, and then a big bad shows up who has a connection to Sam, and they do superhero things. It doesn't lean super hard into the superhero aspect of the storytelling. A lot of it is just very traditional, cut and dry, like coming of age storytelling. I almost wish that they had just done the Divergent thing of just like, oh, and this is your skill set and this is your thing and you have this stuff, as opposed to kind of, I think, intentionally leaving the door very open for anything to happen in a potential sequel film or a series on Disney Channel or on Disney Plus birthed from the concepts and characters used in this film. Which is great as a writer wanting to leave their options open. As an audience member looking for a more holistic thing going on, it is not ideal, unfortunately. But the movie has such a little focus on it, and the effects budget is practically non-existent, to the point where during the climax, when a few, like, slightly CG requiring things start to happen, it looks real goofy. Not even full goofy, like something like Spy Kids 3D, where it's so far into insanity that it's almost fantastic. It's lazy and it's cheap and it is very Sci-Fi Channel. But the film does wisely hold back on using that for the most part. It is much more about these young men and women learning to become themselves and learning to come of age, and it's very sanitized and it's very kid-friendly. It is exceptionally ungodly PG. And it is just, it's not for me. I think if you have a smaller child, like around that like preteen age, like 8 or 9, same thing as with Enola Holmes, which I reviewed last week on the show, and you can check that episode out, and like it was pretty good. We have good episodes, we make good content, like you can like check it out, it'd be fun, whatever. There is an audience for this, and if you have someone that you know who is in that audience, yeah, sure, just be like, hey, put it on. It's 99 minutes, it's quick, it's so inoffensive in every way that it just kind of breezes past, to the point where sometimes I was watching it and I didn't even feel like I was actually watching a movie. I just felt like my eyes had glazed over and the TV was just on. It's just static noise in the background, which is not, it's not the best thing for a film to be. But again, like, the best that this movie could hope for someone who is not, who has a driver's license, is to be the parent driving the minivan while the movie plays on the little TV on the top of the car with the sound blaring, and they can just tune it out and think about something else. Like, I don't know what adults think about. I play Nintendo games and watch movies made for children and talk about them on the internet, so I don't actually know what... Do they talk about fishing? I think they talk about fishing. I don't know. But that's not what we're here to discuss. We're not here to discuss my inadequacies as a man. We are here to discuss Secret Society of Second-Born Royals. I mean, the movie's fine. I think that's kind of the obvious conclusion to come to. And it's fun after reviewing Antebellum and The Devil All the Time last week, where there were a lot of things that I wish I could discuss in terms of like spoilers or other ancillary details. This movie has so few details that actually left a marketable impression on me that it is hard to even think about something that I would potentially want to say, or even really want to complain about. That's the thing with a movie as inoffensive as this, and as kind of milquetoast and designed for a very young audience as this, is that nothing about it makes me angry. Nothing about it really instills any feelings about it to me whatsoever. It is the safest bet I have seen all year. If you are not the kind of person who wants to show your child something that could potentially be objectionable, this is it. You can't do anything. You can't get anything wrong here. The most that happens is, like, people talk about the fact that some people die at some point, which, I mean, it's Disney. That's kind of what they do best. It's just, it feels wrong almost to be reviewing a film like this, especially because I finished watching this movie, and then about 5 minutes later I hit record on this, and it is already a complete haze of memory. If I hadn't, I almost wish I could go back in time and tell myself to find something else to talk about, which is not even necessarily, again, it's not even necessarily a critique on the quality of this film. It is just so far away from anything that interests me or that I have anything meaningful to say, so much so that I'm really glad that there is around a 15-minute time for each of these segments, and that I've hit that 15 minutes so that we can talk about the next thing. So that's good, because we just hit that mark, my friends. Secret Society of Second-Born Royals gets 4 out of 10 stars, with the caveat of, do not listen to me about this. I am not the audience for this. If you are, or if you know someone who is, they probably have Disney Plus already, because everyone has Disney Plus at this point. Watch it if you need something to fall asleep to. All right. Next, we are going to do a review of the Tate Taylor directed action thriller Ava, starring Jessica Chastain. And we're going to be doing that right after the break. So if you would like to stick around and hear about a few more films before you head off to the rest of your day, that'd be real nice of you. See you then.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. It keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Thanks for sticking around. So now we are going to move on to a review of the Tate Taylor directed action thriller Ava. This film stars Jessica Chastain, Common, John Malkovich, and Colin Farrell. And it was released through DirecTV Cinema at the end of August with a full VOD release just this past weekend. I got the dates a little bit wrong in the first part of this episode. If you will forgive me, that has now been rectified. So, Tate Taylor is predominantly known for directing The Help, Girl on the Train, Get On Up, and Ma. He's not a terribly artful director, we should say. He's made some very fine, crowd-pleasing dramas and a couple films that didn't really hit the mark in terms of trying to be the schlockier, more airport novel type of thrillers with Girl on the Train and Ma. So, when it was announced that he was stepping in to direct Ava, taking over for the writer of the film, Matthew Newton, who stepped down from his role as co-producer and director of the film when people started to criticize the film because of allegations of misconduct and abuse in Newton's past, Tate Taylor was brought in. And the only terribly notable thing about this movie is that the cast is extremely high profile. You have Gina Davis and Eoin Gruffud in roles that their names don't even show up on the poster, and they're both relatively well-known names, especially Gina Davis. The cast is very stacked, and the director is consistently making movies that make a decent enough profit. So it's interesting, I suppose, looking at this film and saying, why was this completely buried? Because Jessica Chastain is one of the biggest actresses working right now still. She doesn't do a ton of things, but she is a notable name and has been for about a decade. So when her name is on something, that generally tends to mean either the movie will have people that go see it, or it is some form of an awards contender. And Ava is neither of those movies. The titular character, Ava, played by Chastain, is a well-trained assassin and recovering alcoholic. She's been sober for around 8 years at the time of the film's start, and she starts to question why the people that she is being sent to kill are the people that she is being sent to kill. She's starting to grow a bit of a conscience. She's returning home. Her father has died, and her mother is sick, and she's trying to reconnect with her loved ones. And her handler, John Malkovich, is trying to keep her safe, give her space. And Colin Farrell, Malkovich is he's above Malkovich in his superior. Colin Farrell, Malkovich's superior, is saying this girl's becoming too much of a risk. She's not trustworthy. She's asking too many questions. I'm gonna send someone to kill her. And the movie plays out exactly how you think it will. It's actually more formulaic than the Disney Channel produced movie that we just talked about, which is almost impressive. The biggest issue here has to be Newton's script. It is not even discussing the issues and the very public cases of making a example and a show out of himself in the worst way. Even ignoring all of that, this script just does not work. It has nothing interesting to say. It is TNT, USA Channel, the most bare bones type of thriller story that you would see in a red box where they say, and Bruce Willis in this movie, when he's actually just in the movie for about 3 minutes total. You know the kind of movie I'm talking about. And it's so interesting seeing a notable and successful director with an incredible cast for a script this weak and acting that is this sleepwalking and that is this lazy. Even Taylor is sleepwalking here. There are a lot of digital zooms done in this movie where they will add a zoom in post-production and just random digital effects on the film that look truly terrible. I'm not a huge fan of Taylor's work. He has some tropes behind the camera that I really don't like. He loves, or at least in Ma, he used a lot of split screens, and I really do not care for the split diopter shots where two separate planes are in focus at the same time with a line in the middle separating where the focus shifts. I do not like that sort of thing, but that at least is a stylistic choice, and I can say I don't care for that personally as a viewer. Here, some of the stuff that gets done here is inexcusable and would be stunning to see them be done by a film student, let alone an established director with 4 wide-release movies under his belt. It doesn't... There are 2 kinds of movies that I really dislike. The movies that infuriate me and upset me as a human being because they are offensive or so poorly thought out or just crass in the worst way constantly. And then there are movies that just show no respect for the art form that I love so deeply, deeply much. And I think, unfortunately, that Ava is one of those movies. It is dull and poorly put together and just shoddy in every sense of the word. I don't know, because Jessica Chastain has been attached to this film for a while. She was the one who brought Taylor on. And I don't know what she saw in this script or in this character, not even discussing the fact that Newton is not the most trustworthy person to be working with right now, especially for someone who's been so outspoken about recent events of Hollywood as Chastain has been. I'm lost as to what she saw in this character, because she's a smart and very talented performer who has done some incredible work in films, even smaller roles in films like The Martian, or her breakouts in Take Shelter in the Tree of Life. She knows what she's doing, and now she has the platform and the clout and the cultural capital to be able to do really interesting stuff. But between this and her role in Dark Phoenix last year, I don't know what she's doing, because she seems to now be working on stories and working on films that don't seem to say a whole great deal, which is so confusing. I should say. Is that the best way to say it? I mean, she did It Chapter 2 last year, and I love that movie to death, and she is fantastic as Beverly in that movie. But even then, that is so close to, and not that we should pigeonhole performers and say you can only do one type of thing. A lot of people bounce between like the prestige drama stuff and the schlockier stuff all the time, and I love that. Like, it's good to see performers have range. But Chastain is playing this character as if this is a really hard-hitting drama about addiction and about what it means to take a life. And it's not. It's just a goofy thriller with some really crappy action scenes. And it's bizarre to me because her performance in this film is very bad, despite the fact that she is incredibly talented, and she single-handedly holds movies like Molly's Game and Miss Sloane together, like pulling the fabrics, like Spider-Man trying to meld a bridge together or keep it afloat just through the sheer power of web swinging. Like, she is that good, and she has proven to be that good in the past, so I don't know what she is doing here. I don't know what Common's doing here. I mean, I've never particularly been a huge fan of Common as an actor. I think he can have a lot of fun with things like in Now You See Me. But I just do not vibe with either of these lead performances. John Malkovich and Colin Farrell, by virtue of not having a ton to do, come away a little bit more unscathed just because they seem to know the sort of film that they're in. But all of the really heavy, dramatic conversations that happen in this movie, and there are a lot of them, there are a lot of big ideas and big themes that the movie is trying to tackle, and whenever it dives into that and gets away from the fact that the poster is a woman with a scar on her cheek and like the flowing red hair and the gun, and the tagline says "Kill or be killed." Like, that is ridiculous. And that's fine. I love ridiculous stuff. I love goofy, violent action movies. And this just does not seem to want to commit. It seems ashamed of itself. And maybe that's why it has been dumped on DirecTV cinema. And maybe that's why it is on VOD with no fanfare whatsoever. But this movie is so lost. And there's nothing about it that grabs you as an audience member, as a viewer. And it seems to exist just to exist. If you told me that this movie was a tax write-off somehow, then I would completely believe you. I'm stunned as to why someone said, yes, this is what I'm going to use my time on. Even a worse film like Antebellum, which again I reviewed last week, and like, that's a good review, and you should check it out, and you should check out all our episodes because we make good stuff. Even a film like that, I understand why people wanted to be a part of it. I see the appeal as a creator saying, oh yeah, I want my name attached to this project as a performer, as a crew member, because that's going to be something special. And I have no interest in saying anything negative about the crew, because Hollywood is a job. You do what you got to do. You don't always work on movies that are great, and that's fine. I mean, I just working on personal projects and film school stuff. Yeah, you work on things that aren't great, and that's fine. But these actors have the space in culture. We have given them the power to make discerning decisions and to do things that hold some degree of weight. So what's happening here? I guess I am dancing around the subject a little bit. This movie is nonsense, not in the way that it doesn't make sense. It is the placeholder. It's not even stupid or bad enough to be like a parody movie or the parody poster in a movie. It is just there. It just exists mindlessly and meaninglessly. And that is such an upsetting thing for a film to be, where it just evaporates. It doesn't exist at a certain point. And I think that's the best thing that could happen to this movie, and that's what's going to happen to it, is it's just going to get dumped on Netflix at some point so that the distributors can try and recoup some of the costs. Not that this movie looks particularly expensive, but these are pricey actors, and this is a relatively pricey director, I presume. And it just stinks. It doesn't even stink in a fun way. It doesn't stink in a way that makes me go, oh, we can talk about this and we can learn something from this. You learn more from the shot of Josh Gad in Artemis Fowl where he unhinges his jaw and eats dirt, because at least then you know what went wrong. Here it is not even properly misguided, but just lazy. And that breaks my heart as a lover of this medium, as someone who wants to champion it as much as possible. It just hurts. It hurts that a movie like this got made. It hurts that it has some degree of pulling power because it has such a notable cast of usually extremely talented people who do not show up in things for the most part without good cause. I mean, Malkovich has done some weird things, but he's always really fun to watch, and I can honestly say the same thing for Colin Farrell. He is in some terrible, terrible movies, but I always really like watching him in films like Winter's Tale or Roman J. Israel, not Roman J. Israel Esquire, but Winter's Tale or The Gentleman, movies that I do not like, or even Artemis Fowl, as I previously mentioned. I just really like the guy. I don't know. I like Colin Farrell a lot, but there's not even that fun factor. He's just kind of doing whatever he's supposed to do. There's nothing about it couldn't have been done by anybody else for cheaper. And I don't know what the decision was in the meeting room when they said that, yeah, we're gonna make Ava. We're gonna make this movie and we're gonna put it together and it's gonna be good. I don't track the thought process. And I usually at least have some degree of an idea. Maybe it's wrong. It's probably wrong, but at least there is something that makes logical sense of the decision to create a film. Here, there is none. Ava is 2 out of 10 stars. Do not watch it. It will be on Netflix soon. Don't pay for it. Or Hulu or Amazon Prime, or it'll just be on TNT if TNT's still around. I don't know. It's just not good. So that's all that we've had for modern releases. So what we're going to do for the back half of this episode is we're going to do 2 chunks of a little mini thing that I'm doing or trying to do across a couple episodes, where I am going to talk about my experience watching the Karate Kid movies for the very first time. And we're going to do Karate Kid, the proper Karate Kid, and then we're going to do the Karate Kid Part 2. So stick around for that. We'll see you then. Thank you so much.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And let's just keep getting right back into it. So, one of the things that I want to do with these episodes is I want to use them as a way to force myself to watch things that I have neglected to watch, because if you can make content out of something, then it feels like you're doing work, and that is good. So I'm going to exploit this for personal gain and hopefully find something that we can all find a little bit interesting, do some retrospectives, fill out some blind spots, and maybe offer some recommendations for you wonderful people of movies that you might have missed as well. And I wanted to start off by marathoning, or not marathoning, but like over a couple days, watching all 5 Karate Kid movies. Because a bunch of people that I respect have recommended me the show Cobra Kai, because it just got added to Netflix, which is a continuation of the Karate Kid series. And I had never seen a Karate Kid movie before, so that's the story of how I've begun the task of watching The Karate Kid, The Karate Kid Part 2, The Karate Kid Part 3, The Next Karate Kid, and the remake of The Karate Kid with Jaden Smith from 2010. We're not going to go over all 5 of those movies today, only because, well, also because that's a lot of movies to cover, and also because I'm about halfway through the marathon right now. I'm about halfway through Karate Kid Part 3 as I am recording this, and we'll hopefully finish that up over the next day or two, and we can see what my thoughts are about those movies, especially the ones that are notoriously poorly reviewed, we should say. But we're going to start here with the 1984 film, The Karate Kid. It's directed by John G. Avildsen. John G. Avildsen, who is most famous for directing the original Rocky movie. And it stars Ralph Macchio, Pat Morita, and Elizabeth Shue. So, the interesting thing with talking about a movie like this, that is so important to the cultural consensus, if you haven't seen it before, is trying to rectify the sort of movie that it is versus the impact that it has had. Like, this movie made a ton of money, was nominated for an Oscar for Morita's role, and it basically made karate and martial arts in general, for the most part, a thing in the United States, but especially karate. Like, it kind of started a boon of people wanting to follow in the steps of Macchio's character, of Danny LaRusso, and learn this martial art, both in terms of learning it to know how to fight and defend yourself, and also the more spiritual, more ethereal concepts that Pat Morita's character, the famous Mr. Miyagi, instills in LaRusso over the course of the movie. How you have to use these skills as defense, as a way to preserve life and honor and protect people, and not just use it for aggression and for violence. So there's a lot of baggage in this movie because of how notable it has become. It's like how I would imagine it would feel to watch Ghostbusters or Back to the Future right now after having never seen it before. You know the DeLorean, you know Slimer, you know all of these iconic moments that have been etched into history, and especially growing up in the mid-2000s where you're starting to consume content made by people who were inspired by these films. It is weird because I know the beats of the Karate Kid through pastiche and through homage more than I know the actual events of the film. Like, I know the crane kick. I know the crane kick, you know the wax on, wax off. And I think it does a bit of a disservice to any film to have it be reduced to those most iconic moments far before you see it. It's the whole Rosebud is the sled, Bruce Willis is dead at the end of Sixth Sense, and Darth Vader is Luke's father kind of thing. Those moments, if you don't catch them young, if you are a person who is perpetually entrenched in culture and the online space, you know these things, you know these incredibly iconic moments. And they do tend to lose their power the more you're exposed to them. And that was definitely the case for me watching this movie for the first time a couple days ago. The realization that the things that really, really work for me about this movie is not wax on, wax off. It's not even the crane kick. It's none of the stuff that has made it so important, because nothing that makes the movie so important feels like mine as an audience member. It feels like it belongs to everyone, and it is just presumed, so it doesn't have that impact on me. And that is definitely in no way a reflection of the film, positive or negative. It's a reflection of me and how I have consumed culture and media over the years. But I'll be honest, this movie's really good. The acting is really solid. The relationship between LaRusso and Miyagi soars. Elizabeth Shue plays the love interest, and she does a very good job. Elizabeth Shue is a very talented actress. And while that aspect of the movie is probably the weakest part of it, I'm sure even then, and especially now in retrospect, because it's just the teenage aspect of the movie, when the stuff that people really want to see is this burgeoning mentor and student relationship between LaRusso and Miyagi. And because that's the thing that is most important and most notable about this film and about this franchise as a whole, it is yeah, it's all very strange seeing the iconography of this series being born, and it almost being robbed of the power of said iconography because of how it has been so important. Like, you have William Zabka was a recurring character on How I Met Your Mother. There is a great episode of Community in season 6 where Ken Jeong's character, Ben Chang, is in a stage production of The Karate Kid as Mr. Miyagi. And they are actually they have announced that they are going to make a Broadway musical based on the events of this film, presumably in the wake of successful 80s and other teen movies that have been turned into musicals, films like Heathers for the 80s connection, and for the more general teen connection, films or musicals based on films like Bring It On and Legally Blonde. And with that, and with stuff like Cobra Kai being such a big deal on the online space right now, it is interesting to see how resilient this series has been when there is only one movie in these 5 films that have come out that everyone seems to agree is good. The drop-off of reception, especially in the 4 mainline installments, is very interesting, and I'm sure we will get into that both in the next segment when we discuss The Karate Kid Part 2, and in future episodes discussing Part 3 next, and eventually the remake, and seeing where I fall on that, because that one's definitely a bit of a toss-up. I mean, the movie's very good. We all know this, right? Like, we know it even not having seen it. I was watching it, and it was a great movie long before I had even begun to start watching it. Even before I decided to do this. Even before Cobra Kai got announced and people started really liking it. This movie is very good. And it is hard, in my position, I find, to say whether it is good because it is a good movie, and I believe that honestly, and I am here to eloquate and pontificate about my opinions on things, or if it is great because it is important and it is great. Like, I mean, there are things that don't work about this movie. Like I said, the romance subplot is not my favorite part of it. I think a lot of it can be a little slow. It focuses more on the drama than I expected it to, which I do appreciate, although I do think it kind of hinders the pace a little bit, and it's taking so much from Rocky that it is almost a little ridiculous because of how deeply connected this and that film are, not just sharing a director, but sharing a lot of similar story beats. I mean, the whole concept of this film was Columbia Pictures wanting to have a movie like Rocky under their belt after signing John Avildsen. And it definitely does that, and it's also a big reason this film and Rocky are a big reason why the sports genre is the way that it is. So what is there to even say? I have a feeling that there will be more things to talk about these films as we go along and as we go through the history of this series and how it changes and how it evolves and devolves over the course of the next 4 films. And I'm not gonna give this a star rating or anything because it doesn't really matter. You should watch this movie because it's good. And if you haven't seen it, and if you haven't seen it in a while, you should get back into it. It's a easy upper, and it just makes you feel good about the world, and a movie that successfully and non-patronizingly is all about learning about other people and being nice to them and trying to solve problems, solving individual problems, like just people being mean to each other, trying to solve problems without violence. That's cool. I'm all about that. That's fun and nice. And I don't know. It's a very wholesome movie. It's wholesome in that 80s way where it doesn't feel like you're being taught a lesson, but you walk away from the movie going, oh, I think they taught me something. Not even necessarily intending to, but the messages and the themes of the movie kind of seep through into the audience, which is a really wonderful feeling, honestly. It makes you feel like you're in good hands, in hands that are smarter than you are, which is the best feeling for me as an audience member. And when the filmmakers, when you don't feel judgment from the filmmakers because they are smarter than you. And it's just really neat. I'm sorry that there's not a whole lot more to discuss in depth about this movie, just because it has been combed over and talked about to death. I don't want to clog up space regurgitating other people and saying words that don't mean anything. I'd rather say my own words that mean maybe not nothing, but they mean a little bit, or at least I hope so, because they are genuinely from my brain and about my experience watching this movie. But yeah, overall, it's impossible to separate a film like this from what it has become and how important it is to so many people and how much of a touchstone and a building block this film is specifically. Because I would say the franchise, but really nothing else in the franchise is particularly notable in the cultural landscape. It is just his first film, which is a stark contrast to something like Rocky, where, yeah, you have the first Rocky, which is incredibly iconic, then like Rocky 2 and Rocky 3, but then you get something like Rocky 4, where he wins the Cold War with his fists, and it's the greatest movie ever made. Most series like this don't just have one set of iconic moments. And it is almost watching this movie, knowing what is to come, regardless of my opinions on those movies, knowing what is to come is just a series of pale imitations for the most part. It's like the movie is an island. It's like it maintains its status as an individual film and hasn't been tainted by the success of its successors. It's a similar thing to, as I mentioned previously, Ghostbusters, where Ghostbusters 2 not being very good made that film feel more insular. And I think that's a big reason why there was such a... I mean, that's one of the reasons. There are some other reasons, but that's one of the reasons why there was such a hostile reaction to the 2016 Ghostbusters, despite it being, like, it's fine. It's alright. It's whatever. But I think it's encroaching on an insular piece versus something like the Friday the 13th remake, which is another addition to a long-running seminal 80s franchise, because that series has had so many things that it is less an individual film and more the series as a whole, so expanding on it isn't a huge deal. So yeah, so these movies are islands. Maybe the production companies do not like that they have maintained islands, and a lot of that is because these films have failed to either critically or commercially replicate the success of their original film, but there is something pure about watching a film like the original Karate Kid and saying, whilst the film itself is not even necessarily sullied, but colored very drastically by a world that it helped in some small part to mold, the movie in and of itself still exists and still exists as a holistic piece of media. And that is a very strange and very exciting feeling. To watch something and be able to feel so satisfied by the end of it that it doesn't matter. That it wouldn't matter if nothing else ever came of it. Especially considering what happens in the second film, which we're going to talk about real soon after the ad break. Considering that, and considering how entrenched this trilogy of films are together, how complete this first film is as an experience, and how much of a button it puts on itself. And I really miss that feeling. The feeling that sequels are expansions, not a guarantee. And that going to see a film means that you have a full experience. That it is wrapped up together in such a way that you feel like the filmmakers are in control. And much like Daniel LaRusso, and much like Mr. Miyagi, the creators of this film maintain such a control and such a poise that this movie still holds up remarkably well. 28 years down... Or no, 28, what am I saying? 36 years down the line. So if you stick around with us, we are going to go into the second part of this, where we are going to discuss The Karate Kid Part 2, and then I'm going to send you on your way. See you then.
Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blanks and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
All right, thanks for sticking around. So to finish out today's episode, we are going to keep on with this little Karate Kid retrospective thing and talk about The Karate Kid Part 2, which was released 2 years after the original film in 1986. It's once again starring Ralph Macchio and Pat Morita, although Elizabeth Shue is nowhere to be seen outside of, I think, maybe a few frames of archival footage, although I think there's like 2 seconds where I think she might be in frame, but I think it's just a body double because she's not credited in the film. So the plot for this one, which is a much less revered film than the original Karate Kid, is that Mr. Miyagi and Danny LaRusso go to Okinawa, Miyagi's childhood village where he was born, in order to make peace with Miyagi's dying father. And the interesting thing about the mainline 4 Karate Kid films in the series proper is that every single one of them seems to roughly half the previous film's Rotten Tomatoes score, which I just find very, very funny. So, the original film is currently sitting at an 88% positive reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. Very respectable. The sequel is currently sitting at a 45 on Rotten Tomatoes. 3 is at a 16, and Next Karate Kid is at a 7, which means that I am horrified as to where this little mini recurring segment is going to be going, but we will burn that bridge when we get to it. I bring this up here as opposed to bringing it up later when I get to be angrier in the future, is that whilst The Karate Kid Part 2 is obviously not as solid of a film as the original, I think it is unfairly treated as a lesser product just because of the iconicness and importance of the original film. Almost in a bit of a reverse of the discussion that we had talking about that first film, here almost having it be so underestimated in my eyes and having it be such a seemingly nothing film because it was seen as so much lesser than the film that came before it made me, I feel like, more open to enjoying what the film is trying to do. I think the obligatory relationship subplot with Danny is a lot better than in the first movie. I think we get a lot of ways to see the character of Miyagi expanded upon, and Morita is still pulling in great work here. While the structure of everything isn't as tight as that first film, there are still a lot of really good ideas here and a lot of really cool things at play, and it has a lot of, it's very entrenched in this culture. It's not, it's still Americanized and it's still westernized, but a lot of it's Taco Bell. It is the first thing that is not America-centric that someone would experience to slowly get them on the path of learning more about people that are not like them, which is great. It's Taco Bell. That's probably the first Mexican food you're going to have if you are, like me, a random white kid in middle America, and you slowly say, well, like, this is good. Like, I like this, but, like, where is the stuff that is slightly more authentic and has more depth to it? This metaphor is confusing. I might be hungry, and Taco Bell might have closed by the time that I am recording this, so that's unfortunate. Pour one out for me, friends. Play it again, my Johnny. So, with this movie, with kind of this dampened and Americanized way of looking at this culture, looking at Asian culture around this time, it doesn't go super hard, and it doesn't try and necessarily be confrontational with a lot of this stuff, but it's a very easy way of starting to introduce young audiences because it is this series was so popular with young audiences. It's a way of introducing them into some more diverse and notable themes and ideas. And again, none of them are as strong as the core ideas and the core set pieces and moments and principles of the original Karate Kid film, but that is a relatively high bar to hit because that first movie is very, very good. And while this movie isn't very, very good, it is good, and I'm a little shocked to see how mediocrely reviewed this film was, because it's a pretty good movie. The villain is interesting. It's a bit of a retread of the first film, with the roles somewhat shifted between the teacher that is the real bad versus the student that is like just following the teacher. Here it's reversed. The student is way worse than the teacher turns out to be. Yada, yada, yada. We know what's going to happen. The stakes are raised to a degree, which I do like what they do with raising the stakes of the actual martial arts in this movie. But yeah, overall, it's just a pleasant experience. It doesn't usurp the original in any way, except for me liking the love story subplot a little bit better. It's still relatively unnecessary, but so is this entire movie. And that's not even a super harsh criticism, in my opinion, because we know it's unnecessary. We know that it's not another big movie, because if it was big, people would be talking about it, and people wouldn't start to tense up when I tell them, hey, I'm going to watch 5 Karate Kid movies this week, and they go, enjoy one of them, and I go, I will. But I did really enjoy the Karate Kid Part 2, which was shocking. It's a very similar way to how I enjoyed Rocky 2. Rocky 2 is a good movie. It's not great, and it's pretty much just, hey, you like Rocky, what if we just put it on again? It's the, I think it's Friends, the bit where Joey is so excited to watch Die Hard and Die Hard 2, and he rents the first 2 Die Hard movies from like a Blockbuster or Hollywood Video or something. I don't know, it was the 90s. I wasn't alive when this bit was going on, I'm pretty sure. But he rents both those movies, and he looks at the tapes and goes, oh man, I just rented Die Hard 1 twice. And he's like, no, we'll watch them anyway. Because that's basically what it is. The Karate Kid Part 2 and Rocky 2 and Die Hard 2 and all these movies there is nothing about them that makes them better than just rewatching the original film, which is definitely a negative and definitely something that needs to be rectified and shouldn't be the goal. But if you land there, I mean, there are worse things to be than a slightly less good version of a pretty good movie that changed a little chunk of Americana culture. And I see, I kind of see this movie as a little bit of a little engine that could, and that's not fair because it's a sequel to a massively successful film, and Karate Kid Part 2 did make a great deal of money on a similarly small budget to the original film. It was a financial success, even if it wasn't a critical or particularly cultural one. But, I mean, the money's gone by this point. Money fades, time does all that. But the cultural capital of the original Karate Kid is still so strong that seeing a film like this, seeing the successor that is just completely neglected and rejected by cultural critics and cultural influencers of today, seems somewhat unfair. And I find that all very, very interesting, honestly. There is a soul to this movie, and it has the same spunk and the same moxie as that first film. I guess the Chavez guy, like, you got moxie, Ralph Macchio, you adult man playing a 16-year-old at this time. As I mentioned, I'm about halfway through The Karate Kid Part 3, and he's looking so much like an adult at this point that it is just, it's very, very funny. He still looks, I mean, he's got a young face, so he doesn't look too old in this film, but it's already starting to get there just a little bit, where it's like, oh, you're a grown man. You're a grown man, Ralph. You were born in 1961. You are 25 years old, playing a 16-year-old karate fanatic, which is very funny to me, because I am a slightly mean person sometimes. I don't necessarily want to be, but it happens, and it is fun. But we're not going to be mean. We're going to be nice to the Karate Kid Part 2, because it doesn't have the legs to stand on its own. It feels easier for me to criticize the original Karate Kid than it feels for me to criticize this one, because I know that you can take a pot shot at the Karate Kid and people will come to defend it, myself included. But if you walk into a bar and say, hey, the Karate Kid Part 2 stinks, no one's gonna fight you. And that's a shame. I mean, it's good. Like, you shouldn't fight people over movie opinions unless they're, like, really, really bad. Like, if they say something crazy, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a joke for a bad opinion, but I don't want to upset people. So we're just going to move on. But you shouldn't fight people over movie opinions, but there should be some passion behind it. And I don't know why I have such a passion for the metatext of the Karate Kid Part 2. Not even necessarily for the film itself, although, again, I do like it. It's a good movie. But I have such a passion for this little engine that could type deal going on with this movie in a cultural standpoint, because, and I think a lot of that is because that first movie is the inspiration for Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai is a sequel to that film. It's about the characters of that first film. And the new characters that are brought in and the new ideas that are brought in Karate Kid Part 2 aren't terribly important to Cobra Kai. And it just kind of moves on without these films. And a big part of that is why I wanted to do this little retrospective of discussing these 5 films and giving all of them their due, is because the first movie is making a comeback, and that is it. It is being immortalized, even past culture, even past what it did in the 80s. It's being immortalized again for a brand new generation. My people my age, my friends, are telling me to watch the Karate Kid sequel show because they love it. So that's going to keep going. The generational gap is going to keep spinning. And there are going to be more people who are showing the original Karate Kid to their children. And that's a wonderful thing. Again, that movie is really good and is better than the sequel. But it's a shame to see a movie that made a little bit more money, but about as much in terms of comparison to the budget, because the budget was a little bit higher and the gross was a little bit higher. But seeing a movie that is not equally good, no, not by any means, but is also good and is a continuation of these characters and is a continuation of this story in a way that I think is very faithful and honest to the original film, expanding upon it without making that first film feel anything less than by itself. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that John Avildsen is back directing, and Robert Mark Kamen, the writer of the original film, is back doing this as well. It's all the same team. And they all seem to like each other a great deal. Or at least I would sure hope so. These people made 3 movies together over the course of 6 or so years? Which is ridiculous. That's a lot of movies. Yeah, oh, okay. Over the course of 5 years. 1984, 1986, 1989 for part 3. I digress. My apologies. Maybe I shouldn't be so kind to this movie. Or maybe not necessarily kind is even the right word, but maybe I shouldn't defend the Karate Kid Part 2 so much here for you today. But I think it has been forgotten a little bit, and I think that is a shame, because there are a lot of pieces of this movie that I do really enjoy, and I'm happy that no one prepared me for it so I could be so pleasantly surprised by it, but I almost wish that more people talked about how pretty good The Karate Kid Part 2 is. So I'm going to get back to watching the bad ones, and we'll talk about those at a later date. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Real quick, I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show, and if you could write a nice review, that really, really helps us out. Thank you so much. And if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much. Watch something that makes you real happy this week. Have a good night. Thank you. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.